2 young princes, a crown within reach, and a fortress that was supposed to protect them, but became their tomb. In 1483, England's royal heirs were taken to the Tower of London. It was meant to prepare them for a coronation. Instead, they vanished. No trial, no funeral, just silence. For over 5 centuries, historians have asked the same question: who killed the princes in the tower? But before we reach the night they disappeared, we need to return to a kingdom already drowning in betrayal, ambition, and blood. Because these boys were born into a game they never asked to play. And in England, crowns are won in shadows long before they're placed on heads. The year was 1483, but England's wounds from the Wat Wars of the Roses still bled fresh. For 3 decades, 2 rival houses, Lancaster, Red Rose, and White York, White Rose, had torn the kingdom apart in a brutal civil war. The House of York had claimed victory through King Edward IV, a tall, commanding warrior who had crushed his enemies on the battlefield. His reign brought stability, but peace was fragile. His enemies waited, silent, for the perfect moment to strike again. Edward IV had married Elizabeth Woodville, a stunning widow from a powerful family. Many nobles hated her, especially because her relatives gained powerful court positions. The Woodvilles were seen as greedy upstarts, and their influence caused deep resentment among old Yorkist allies. Edward IV had 2 legitimate sons, Edward, Prince of Wales, 12 years old, and King Richard, Duke of York, 9 years old, heirs to the Yorkist crown. They were the future of the dynasty. But in England, children born to kings were pawns, and pawns rarely survived the game. On April 9, 1483, Edward IV died suddenly. Some said illness, others whispered poison. Whatever the truth, the throne passed to Edward V, a boy too young to rule. The kingdom needed a regent, a protector to rule until Edward came of age. That role was entrusted to Richard, Duke of Gloucester, Edward IV's younger brother. Richard had a reputation as a loyal, capable soldier, but loyalty is a dangerous word in royal courts. It often lasts only as long as it serves ambition. Almost immediately, factions formed. On one side, the Woodvilles, led by Elizabeth Woodville and her powerful brother, Anthony Woodville, Earl Rivers. They wanted to control the young king. On the other, Richard, who distrusted the Woodvilles and feared they would destroy Yorkist stability. The stage was set, and the first move Richard made was brutal. Edward V was traveling from Ludlow to London for his coronation, escorted by his uncle Earl Rivers and a small household guard. Richard intercepted them near Stony Stratford with an army. Richard arrested Rivers, along with 2 other Woodville loyalists, on charges of treason. The young king protested, but his protests meant nothing. Richard assured him this was for his protection. Edward V was placed in Richard's custody and moved to London. The arrests sent shockwaves through the court. The protector of the realm now held the rightful king as his prisoner, though few dared call it that. Richard entered London with Edward V by his side, the boy dressed in royal robes, smiling weakly to cheering crowds. But behind those cheers was unease. The boy was not free. He was a prisoner dressed as a prince. The Tower of London wasn't just a prison. It was a royal palace, where kings traditionally stayed before their coronations. So when Edward V was taken there in May 1483, no one panicked, at first. But Richard then ordered that Richard, Duke of York, the younger prince, join his brother in the tower. The official explanation? For companionship. 2 boys, locked together in a fortress surrounded by guards. At first, they were seen playing in the gardens, waving to crowds from the windows. But witnesses later described their faces changing. Thinner, paler, quieter. And then, slowly, they stopped appearing altogether. While the boys waited for Edward V's coronation, Richard made his boldest move. He declared that his brother Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville had been invalid, claiming Edward had been pre-contracted to another woman. This made the prince's fashion illegitimate, legally unable to inherit the throne. On June 25, 1483, Parliament officially accepted this claim. Just days later, Richard was crowned Sire King Richard III. The princes were still alive at this point. At least, that's what people believed. But they were never seen in public again. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said they were being starved. Some whispered they were smothered in their sleep. Others insisted Richard had ordered their quiet execution the very night he was crowned. No bodies. No confessions. Only silence. By autumn, the people of London whispered in fear. The princes were gone. And if Richard had killed them, he had killed England's future. If this first chapter left you questioning everyone's loyalty, Hit like, share this with someone who loves dark history, and drop your theory in the comments. Because next, we step inside the tower itself, and follow the final nights before the princes vanished forever. 2 young boys, 2 royal heirs, and one night that changed England forever. The Tower of London stood silent under the cold summer moon of 1483. Guards whispered of orders they didn't understand. Servants avoided the royal apartments. The princes hadn't been seen for weeks, and now even the shadows seemed to hold their breath. This is the night history tries to piece together. The last known hours of Edward V and Richard, Duke of York. Was it murder, rescue, or something even darker? What happened inside those walls would echo for centuries. The Tower of London had always been a symbol of royal power, but by mid-July 1483, it had become a cage. The princes' apartments were moved from the royal palace section to the inner chambers, closer to the White Tower, a move that alarmed servants. The number of guards doubled. Access to the boys was restricted. Reports from visitors stopped abruptly. One chronicler wrote, "The young king plays no more in the gardens. He is kept from the eyes of the people." The city of London murmured with fear. Every day, fewer glimpses of the princes were reported until none at all. Witnesses later recalled unusual activity in the tower. Extra guards on night duty, chests and trunks being moved at odd hours. Some claimed to hear muffled cries late at night. One account, written years later, described a servant seeing the princes led deeper into the tower by 4 men, and never returning. But were these true observations, or just rumors born of fear? Even the guards seemed confused. Many believed they were protecting the boys, not imprisoning them. But the strictest orders came directly from King Richard's closest men, particularly Sir Robert Brackenbury, Constable of the Tower. And then there were the whispers of 2 men whose names would forever be tied to that night: Sir James Tyrrell and Mon John Dighton. According to later confessions, extracted under duress years afterward, Richard III gave a secret order to eliminate the princes. Tyrrell, his loyal knight, was allegedly sent to the tower with written instructions. Brackenbury refused at first, claiming his conscience wouldn't allow it. Tyrrell supposedly returned with a direct command from the king himself. On a moonless night, Tyrrell and his men allegedly entered the prince's chamber. The boys were sleeping. The method described was chilling. They were smothered with pillows, silently, so no blood would be spilled. Their small bodies were then buried at the foot of the stairs, hidden beneath rubble. But is this confession truth, or Tudor propaganda written years later to blacken Richard's name? Not everyone believed Richard III killed them. Some historians argue the princes may have been secretly removed from the tower, smuggled out by loyalists to protect them. One theory claims Edward V was sent abroad, possibly to Burgundy, and lived in obscurity. Several pretenders later appeared, claiming to be the lost princes. Another theory blames Henry Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, Richard's ambitious ally, who may have acted without the king's knowledge to secure his own power. And then there's the most daring idea, that Richard kept them alive for a time but lost control of their fate as rebellion grew against him. No matter which version is true, one fact is certain. By autumn 1483, both boys were gone. Londoners whispered prayers for the boys, but no one dared speak openly against the king. Graffiti appeared near churches. God save the true king. Elizabeth Woodville, their mother, went into sanctuary at Westminster Abbey, refusing to leave. She believed, or wanted to believe, that her sons were still alive. But hope was fading. The prince's windows stayed dark at night. No laughter, no songs, no footsteps. And for many, silence was louder than any scream. By the end of 1483, most of England believed the princes were dead. But without proof, Richard ruled unchallenged, for now. If this chapter left you haunted by questions, hit like, share this mystery with someone who loves true history, and drop your theories in the comments. Because in the final, we uncover the bones, the betrayal, and the investigation that tried to solve England's darkest royal murder. 2 boys disappeared. A king was accused of killing them. And for over 500 years, the world has searched for the truth. The Tower of London held its secret well. But bones were found, confessions extracted, and new theories written in blood and dust. This is the final chapter, where we follow the betrayals that toppled Richard III, the shocking discoveries centuries later, and the question that still haunts England. Were the princes murdered, or did they escape? By 1485, Richard III's crown was slipping. His reputation had been blackened by whispers of child murder, whether true or not. Many nobles turned against him, believing the boys were dead and fearing they might be used by rebels if alive. Rebellion spread, and leading that rebellion was Henry Tudor, a Lancastrian exile who saw an opportunity to claim the throne. On August 22, 1485, Richard faced Henry at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard fought bravely, even charging Henry directly, but he was surrounded and killed. His crown was found on the battlefield and placed on Henry's head. Henry Tudor became Henry VII, the first Tudor king. The Yorkist line, along with the princes, was gone. But Henry now faced a problem. He had taken the throne by conquest, not inheritance. And so, the mystery of the princes became both a weapon and a shield. Henry VII had every reason to ensure Richard III was remembered as a villain. And what better way to secure his legitimacy than to portray Richard as a child killer? Chroniclers under Tudor rule painted Richard as a deformed, scheming murderer. Plays, including those by Shakespeare, cemented his image as the hunchbacked monster who smothered his nephews. But here's the problem. Henry VII himself never produced the bodies. He never showed the people proof. Some believe Henry knew the princes were dead long before Bosworth. Others suspect he silenced the truth himself, fearing that if the princes were alive, they might be used against him. The mystery deepened when pretenders began to rise. In the years after Bosworth, men claimed to be the lost princes. The most famous was Perkin Warbeck, who said he was Richard, Duke of York. He gained support from foreign courts and even invaded England. Henry VII eventually captured him and executed him, calling him an impostor. But some whispered, what if he really was the younger prince? Elizabeth Woodville, the prince's mother, never spoke publicly about their deaths. Some historians believe she might have known, or at least suspected, that one of her sons had survived. The truth remained locked away, hidden in shadows, until centuries later, when bones were discovered. In 1674, workers demolishing a staircase in the Tower of London found a wooden box containing the skeletons of 2 children. The bones were found buried near the White Tower, exactly where Sir Thomas More's account had said they were hidden. King Charles II ordered the bones to be placed in Westminster Abbey, in an urn inscribed with their names, Edward V and Richard, Duke of York. But no scientific analysis was done at the time. The identification was based on location and assumption. In 1933, the urn was opened, and the bones were examined. They were consistent with 2 children around the right ages, but the evidence was inconclusive. DNA testing, proposed in modern times, has been denied out of respect. So, even with the bones, the truth remains just out of reach. Who killed the princes? Richard III, the most widely accepted theory. As king, he had motive and opportunity, but no direct evidence ties him to the act. Henry VII. If the boys survived into his reign, eliminating them would secure his throne. Some suggest he finished what Richard started. The Duke of Buckingham. Ambitious and ruthless, Buckingham may have acted alone to gain favor with Richard or Henry. They escaped. Some believe one or both princes were smuggled out and lived under new identities, their descendants hidden in plain sight. Even today, historians argue. Books, documentaries, and forensic experts continue to search for proof. But the tower keeps its secret. The faces of those 2 boys, pale and innocent, still haunt every stone in that fortress. And perhaps that's the cruelest truth of all. We may never know. Thank you for staying with me through this dark royal mystery. If this story made you think, gave you chills, or left you with more questions than answers, then like this video, share it with a friend who loves history, and drop your theories in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to HistoryMind, because this is what we do here. We bring back the stories history tried to bury. The princes may be gone, but their shadows are still here.